U.S. to screen for anti-Americanism in immigration applications, a move critics liken to McCarthyism. The United States government has announced a new policy to introduce screening for so-called anti-Americanism in immigration applications, a move that has immediately ignited controversy and comparisons to the McCarthy era. The Department of Homeland Security has confirmed that under the upcoming guidelines, immigration officers will be required to examine applicants' views, affiliations, and digital activity to determine whether they harbor attitudes or behaviors considered hostile to the United States. Officials claim the aim is to protect democratic institutions from extremist influences, particularly in an era where online disinformation and radical ideologies spread quickly across borders. Supporters of the initiative argue that America has the right to ensure that newcomers respect its constitutional values and do not pose risks to its security or way of life. Critics, however, say the concept of anti-Americanism is dangerously vague and could easily be weaponized against immigrants who express dissent or criticize U.S. policies. Civil liberties organizations, immigrant rights groups, and legal scholars warn that the measure risks creating an ideological litmus test for immigration, something reminiscent of the blacklists and loyalty oaths of the 1950s. The American Civil Liberties Union has called the move thought policing, stressing that dissent is not disloyalty but an integral part of democratic society. Advocacy groups fear the policy could be used to exclude individuals simply for opposing foreign interventions, criticizing systemic racism, or engaging in social movements. Legal experts also caution that the plan may conflict with First Amendment principles, even if applied to non-citizens. Questions remain over how immigration officials will determine what constitutes anti-American sentiment, and whether political opinions, protest activity, or online criticism will be grounds for denial. The lack of a clear definition raises concerns about arbitrary enforcement, subjectivity, and political bias. Critics argue that the standard could silence immigrants who wish to speak honestly about America's flaws while still seeking to contribute positively to its future. Political reactions to the proposal have been sharply divided. Republican lawmakers have praised it as a necessary measure to safeguard the nation, framing it as common sense that those who despise America should not be granted residency or citizenship. Senator Tom Cotton applauded the idea, insisting that people who reject American values should not be allowed to benefit from its freedoms. Some Democrats have cautiously supported a narrowly tailored approach that targets violent extremism, but progressive leaders have condemned the broader implications. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez labeled it a loyalty oath in disguise, warning that dissent and protest are essential parts of American identity. The proposal has also drawn international attention, as critics highlight that anti-Americanism often emerges from opposition to U.S. foreign policy or economic dominance. Many immigrants who eventually became proud American citizens arrived with skepticism of U.S. policies, only to embrace American ideals over time. Scholars stress that diversity of thought and the freedom to criticize government are what distinguish American democracy from authoritarian systems. By creating ideological purity tests, they argue, the U.S. risks undermining the very values it seeks to protect. Concerns also extend to the technological realm. Immigration authorities already conduct detailed social media checks, but expanding this to monitor political opinions could amplify surveillance and chill free expression. Applicants may feel pressured to delete posts, avoid activism, or censor their speech to avoid being labeled anti-American. Privacy advocates warn this creates an Orwellian environment where immigrants live under suspicion for their beliefs rather than their actions. Historically, the U.S. has imposed ideological restrictions on immigration, particularly during the Cold War when communists and anarchists were barred. But experts argue that those restrictions, though controversial, were at least tied to specific ideologies. The notion of anti-Americanism, by contrast, is subjective and open-ended, making it far more vulnerable to abuse. The Department of Homeland Security is expected to publish detailed guidelines in the coming weeks, followed by a public comment period. Advocacy groups are preparing to challenge the measure in court, arguing it violates constitutional norms and undermines America's international image as a defender of free expression. Immigrant communities remain anxious, fearing that political expression could now jeopardize their future in the United States. Opponents insist that America's greatest strength lies in its ability to welcome diverse voices and perspectives, even when they are critical. They warn that confusing dissent with disloyalty risks damaging the foundations of democracy itself. As the debate intensifies, the controversy highlights the enduring struggle in U.S. history between security and liberty, and the question of who gets to decide what it means to truly be American.